Welcome to Overcoming Distractions. This is the place where adults, entrepreneurs, and busy professionals who might be a little distracted grab knowledge, inspiration, and encouragement to get focused, overcome obstacles, and thrive in business and in life. If you are an adult with ADHD, you are in the right place. But don't worry, because all types of brains are welcome. If you feel distracted at times and want the tools to achieve more in life, thrive in business, and learn a little bit more about yourself, come on in. Each week, a new expert in the field of performance, productivity, focus, and being true to yourself shares their knowledge and tips. And of course, adult ADHD. You'll always walk away with action items you can use. Ready for another engaging expert discussion? Here's your host, author of the best-selling book, Overcoming Distractions, Dave Greenwood.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Overcoming Distractions. It's Dave, and as I always say, I'm glad you joined us and you're hanging out with us for a little bit. So this week we're talking about the gifted adult, and that could actually classify a lot of people who listen to this podcast. I have Paula Prober. She's a psychotherapist, and she's a consultant that actually works with people in this area, people that feel they are gifted. And she does do some consulting about parenting gifted children as well. She's the author of Your Rainforest Mind and Journey into Your Rainforest Mind. It's a field guide for gifted adults and teens, book lovers, overthinkers, geeks, and so on. So Paula and I have a great conversation about what the rainforest mind is. She actually has a very good explanation and why she calls the gifted mind the rainforest mind. I'm going to let her do that. We talk about some of the challenges that some people who may be gifted encounter, including sometimes our inability to wait. Sometimes we get overwhelmed, and potential as well as focus. So this is a really cool conversation with Paula, and I really encourage you to hang in there. She has some great, not only insight into the gifted mind, but some great advice for maximizing that different brain, that gifted mind. So I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts about this. So if you want to hop on Apple Podcasts and give us a rating, I always appreciate the great feedback that everybody provides. And if you're new to the podcast and want to learn more about more podcasts as well as my book, just go to overcomingdistractions.com. So let's go talk to Paula. All right, everybody, welcome back. It's Overcoming Distractions. It's Dave. And as I mentioned in the introduction, we're going to talk about giftedness today. And you can define that any way you want. I know for those who have ADHD, who listen to the podcast, there may be two schools. You may feel that you have a gift. And if you manage your ADHD properly, then you can thrive with that gift. I know there's a lot of people out there also that feel that their different brain can be a curse sometimes, and they struggle with things. So we're going to talk about both of those aspects. But as I mentioned, I have Paula Prober on here. So Paula, welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me, David.
Yeah. I stumbled on one of your articles about giftedness, and there were some of the things that I think resonated with me, resonated with certain life experiences, and then obviously resonate with people that listen to the podcast. So I'm excited to chat about this conversation. Again, I say this a lot on the podcast, ADHD or not. So if you're listening to the show and you feel you have a gift, but just need to manage it a little better, then I think this is going to be a great discussion. But Paula, just tell people a little bit about yourself and your practice. Take a minute or so and just introduce yourself to people.
Sure. So I'm a therapist, a psychotherapist in Eugene, Oregon, and I specialize in working with this particular population of people that I call have rainforest minds. So it's a particular type of what we might call giftedness. And I'm a consultant with people around the world who have these traits. And I've got a couple of books out, and I have a blog. And my specialty is working with clients who, we might call them neurodiverse, right? Neurodiversity is kind of one of the latest terms that we use.
Yeah.
But these are people who have, who are big thinkers. They are deep thinkers. They're highly sensitive. They have a lot of empathy usually. So it's not what we necessarily think of as traditionally gifted with people who are high achievers or people who have high IQs, although they can be both of those things too. And so that's the group of people that I work with.
Yeah. So could you dig a little deeper into kind of your definition of the gifted mind? What are their qualities? What are some of those examples?
Sure. Yeah. So let's see. So these are people who are, you use the word overthinking. I mean, these are people who are, we call them overthinkers sometimes because they're curious, they're asking questions, they're wanting to know more, they're interested in everything. And so the judgment word is you're an overthinker. When really what I say is they're just people who are deep thinkers and complex thinkers, and many times they can make connections between things that other people don't see. So they're divergent thinkers and creative people. So those are like, sort of like the mental traits. And then there are the sensitivities, the highly sensitive to sound, even sound and smells and tastes and chemicals. There's just this, I think it's more like I don't know what we would call it, a body sensitivity or a sensual sensitivity where they feel more. So it's not just that they think a lot, but they feel a lot, feel more. So it's like their emotions, they're more emotional often and expressive and intense. So those are some of their traits, and sort of in the ADHD realm, some of them I would say could be diagnosably ADHD, but many of them are not. But they have this. They look distractible. Because they're interested in so many things. And they can jump from one thing to another very quickly. And when they're kids in school, sometimes they get diagnosed ADHD when they're not, because they're moving a lot. They might be more advanced in the classroom, so they come to school already being able to read, and so that means that they may not be challenged in the classroom, and so they look like they're distracted when they are distracted, but it's not maybe because of ADHD. It's just because they're not challenged in the classroom. So those are some.
Yeah. Do you think it's they're not challenged and they need to move at a faster pace? Is it they're not being taught the way their brains need to be taught? Or is it both? Is it more than that?
Yeah, I would say it's both. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Generally, they need to move at a faster pace, and they're typically, when we're talking about kids, they're at a couple grade levels above the grade that they're in usually, right? So those are some of the issues in school. The other thing I should mention is that I use the term rainforest mind to describe this type of person. And sometimes that's useful because using the word gifted can be controversial, can be uncomfortable. People don't know what it means. People define it in many different ways. And some of my clients don't test well, so they aren't on that high IQ level. I just talked to someone this week who she's so intelligent that she takes a multiple choice test and she can explain why all those answers are correct, because she's like, she's got such a big brain. She can, so then she can't take the test very well. She gets anxious. And so some of these people are not typically what we would call the smart people, when we think about who is gifted and who is intelligent. So the rainforest mind, I'll explain to you why I came up with that. I was a teacher, an educator before I became a therapist, and it was very uncomfortable in the schools to identify who's the gifted child, and it was the high achievers who were identified, who could have been the gifted kids too, but a number of kids were missed. So I thought, well, how do I explain what giftedness is in my experience to people? And I thought, well, we could use an ecosystem model. And we could say that some people are like deserts, and some people are like meadows, and some are like volcanoes, and some are like rainforests. And all ecosystems are beautiful and valuable, and they're all necessary. And yet the rainforest ecosystem is the most complex. It's highly prolific, it's intense, it's creative, it's overwhelming sometimes, when you're in this rainforest where there's so much life and so much intensity. And so these people are like that. And so they're not better than anybody else, but they just are more complex. And what's interesting is, with the rainforests, they're so important to us, and gifted people have a contribution that they can make if they're nurtured and nourished. And so that's another way the analogy works. And then I sort of joke about it, but I'll say that the rainforest mind person often runs into chainsaws in their lives, where people want to cut them down. People want to make them fit in with everybody else when they don't. And so that analogy has helped people who wouldn't identify themselves as gifted, but they will come to me and they'll say, I'm not gifted, but I think I have a rainforest mind. And so that's another way to describe who I'm talking about. Does that make sense? Yeah.
It absolutely does. Yeah. I went to we go to a island, St. Martin, every year, and back several years ago, I took a side trip to a island called Saba. Some people call it Saba. It's pronounced Sabre or whatever, but it's owned by the Dutch. It's about an hour or so boat ride from St. Martin. 2,000 people live on it, but it goes straight up. It's a volcano. It's gorgeous, but there's a little rainforest in there, and you can walk through the steps and what have you. And you use the word complex kind of ecosystem and what have you, but I thought it was one of the most peaceful places I'd ever been on Earth. So, so that's interesting that you talk about. You're right. There's so many things going on in the rainforest, but I thought it was a great place to live.
Well, that's interesting. What does that say about you, right? that you're comfortable in a situation like that, or in an intense environment like that. What would you say? You felt more connected there? What was the peacefulness?
I think that I guess we're just so busy in our daily lives, and yeah, I'll admit I have a fast brain, so that's no secret. There's a lot of things going on. I'm running a day business and what have you, and I think just any opportunity to break away from that and break away from the emails and the texts and the phone calls and clients yelling at you about something, or just quite honestly forgetting about your regular 9-to-5 life for any period of time, no matter how you do it, I think kind of attracted me. I mean, I have a lake up here. I'm outside of Boston, and I have a lake that I like to walk around, and it's dead quiet there too. And I guess I get the same feeling. So you also get to, maybe it's a form of meditation. I don't know what it is, but it's about a 45-minute loop around this lake. But when I get back to my car, I always feel a little more relaxed. I've figured something out that's been bothering me. So I guess I kind of equate it with peace and calm and focus.
Well, you know what that makes me think of is that it's that being in nature. I will, there's the rainforest intensity, but when I have these clients who are anxious, who need some sort of maybe even spiritual experience of connection and being part of something, I will definitely recommend that they get into nature, and that it's very soothing and peaceful and even spiritual for a lot of people. So that makes sense that that would be what you
Yeah.
felt. Yeah.
When I got married, my wife and I went up to a place called Rangeley, Maine, and it was 5 hours from Boston. And we rented a cabin, and I was in hell. There was no TV, there was no anything. And within a couple of days, we were down the street sitting at a sports bar, just sitting at the bar having a couple beers and getting wings and what have you. Now at my age, I'd go there in a heartbeat. I'd drop the phone. I would die to be sitting up there right now. So I guess life changes, huh?
Sure. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. What you
yeah.
wanted when you were in your 20s is not necessarily what works
No,
for you now, right?
no, and I think I had the energy to move a little faster. Now I'm just like I have, no desire to just be on call 24/7 and for whomever. But so we uh, as you mentioned, on your website and there are some challenges I think that we need to overcome. And you had listed a couple of them. And I know me personally, and again, I don't know if I call myself gifted or what have you, but waiting is one of them. And I'm one of the most impatient people. I know my son is, so it's probably in the DNA somewhere. But kind of talk about how, I use the example, and I think a lot of people, and I interviewed some in the book, Overcoming Distractions, that the corporate world moved too slow for certain people. And they had a great idea and they knew how to make something better, whether it was a product or a procedure or what have you in the corporate world. And of course, all right, your idea has to go to your boss, and then it has to go to his or her boss, and then it has to, get spun around in a conference room and thrown up on the whiteboard. And, by then the person who had the great idea, who had the fast brain, decided this is too slow for me. So, and I can't take this anymore. And I think that's why a lot of people, at least in the ADHD world, go out and open up their own businesses, because they can make their decisions very quickly. So can you talk to me about why waiting can be a struggle for the people we're talking about?
Oh, yes, for sure. It starts in school, right? See, there's waiting and there's waiting. There's just it's like, it makes sense to be patient with people and all of that, kind of like, all right. But anyway, for this population, there's waiting that's so frustrating because often in school, you're told that the child is told, you need to wait, don't finish. It's like the story of the second grader who takes the workbook home and does the whole thing that night. And they're so excited. And I had a client tell me this. So she was so thrilled. She did the whole workbook in one night, brought it back to her teacher, and her teacher got mad at her, for working ahead. You can't work ahead, right? And this was a client who was in her 40s probably and still remembered that, how hurt she was that the teacher wasn't happy that she had done all the work. And so then she's supposed to sit there. She had to sit there and wait in the classroom, and the teacher gave her something to color. It's like, and this is a child who is just so anxious to learn something, right?
Yeah.
So reading, she wants to learn a new thing, and she has to sit there and wait. And there's I don't know if what you read in my blog, I wrote this piece about, there's a quote from somebody who did a survey of, I don't know, like 13,000 gifted children or something, and said, what was the one thing that was the biggest problem for you, or something like that. And the majority of them, you said that waiting waiting for people to finish, waiting for people to catch up, waiting for people to understand them. I mean, it's awful. It's so frustrating. And when you talk about adults in meetings, I've had a lot of clients tell me how frustrating it is to do what you said. It's like, you have the idea and you had the idea 2 months ago, and then everybody else is, they have to talk about it. They maybe don't even understand your idea. And they don't, it's just that they're slower to come up with thoughts and share ideas. And it's just frustrating to sit in meetings.
I think there's also in the corporate world, there's processes that need to go through, and I get it. I get it. They don't want to make a bad decision, but it doesn't foster innovation sometimes for people who are, fast thinkers.
Right. And you can be, you're not necessarily liked by your coworkers or appreciated. Your fast thinking isn't necessarily appreciated. And I have a lot of people who are, you could say they're more intelligent than their supervisors. They know more than the person above them or in charge of them. And that's waiting and frustrating. And I definitely recommend that many of my clients, if they have any kind of entrepreneurial talent, that they think about working for themselves, because it's so frustrating to wait and to be around all these people who with good intentions, but they just aren't as intellectually competent.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I'll flip that on its head and saying that, some of those impulsive decisions can be dangerous. I mean, not jumping off a cliff without a parachute, but I mean, there are times when something does need to go through its due process. So,
Sure. And I'm not really talking about impulsive decisions. These aren't, in my view, these people aren't impulsive, really. But they're creative and they have a lot of good ideas, and they can solve problems faster. So it's not about, I wouldn't recommend impulsive decisions either, right? Yeah, jumping off the cliff is not, that would be great. But
no, most of us are careful with that. So
yeah, well, they may be seen as impulsive. They may be labeled that way when they're really not. When the person has actually thought it through, but they think it through a lot faster. They just have a more divergent mind. They can think more creatively, more quickly.
Right, more nimble than their boss that doesn't know anything. So,
Yeah.
You talk a little bit about overwhelm too. So explain to us how those that may be gifted can get overwhelmed. What causes that?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the sensitivity. It's like they are picking up. They're picking up more than what the average person can see. It's just interesting. You are capable of feeling more, seeing more, knowing more, and that can be overwhelming. The empathy with the rainforest-minded person, they have a lot of empathy. So that means that they're in a room feeling other people's emotions. They're intuitive. So they have somebody in the room is angry and they're feeling upset. They pick it up. They feel maybe in their bodies. They feel some tension, or they feel tightness in their neck or something. And there's nothing necessarily that's happened to them directly, but they're picking up something in the room. And that can be overwhelming, to just be bombarded by other people's emotions that are not maybe even felt by the other person, or not addressed, or not explained. And so that can be part of the overwhelm. I think it's mostly in those sensitivity areas, the sensitivity and the empathy that are that can be overwhelming. And even they can be overwhelmed with their own thoughts. And I have a lot of clients who feel anxious I mean, just overwhelmed by, oh my God, right? What's happening in the world? That
Yeah.
that awareness of the the injustice in the world. Concerned about suffering on the planet, concerned about planetary climate change. I mean, there's generally in this population at an early age, they're very young and they're already worried about, I mean, here in Oregon, clear cutting, cutting down trees. I mean, there's just an awareness and then an overwhelm of all the, what do I do? How do I help? There's so much suffering on the planet, racism. I mean, just so many things that are overwhelming in
Do
that
they?
regard.
I mean, does the rainforest mind take on too much in terms of overwhelm? So I get it. We should all be good citizens, and these things are obviously worthy of our time and whatever we can do
Mhm.
as a community to help move things in the right direction, whether it's politically or socially or what have you. But do we tend to
Mm.
take on too much of that burden in our mind?
In your mind and in your actuality, right, in your actions. That's often the case. I'll talk to clients about boundaries, about where is an appropriate boundary. Maybe you are taking on too much responsibility for other people. It's like if you can see something that could help someone, do you have to do it? Do you have to help them? If you can understand, let's say, you can guide somebody, let's say you're a really good problem solver and you can fix something for somebody else. Are you supposed to do it every time? I guess and so
Yeah.
I will suggest to people that they really evaluate, and just because you can do it doesn't mean you should, is what I will tell people. Yeah, because they will get overwhelmed and burn themselves out, and then they may even resent it at some point, that they're always the one being the counselor for their friends. Sometimes that's the case, right? You're
Yeah.
a great listener. You have a lot of empathy, so people come to you and they share their problems with you, and nobody listens to you, right? So yeah, so I will definitely talk to people about boundary setting.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear Siri going off on there.
Gee, what's she listening to?
She's listening to us. So, you also talk about potential, and I know that obviously somebody who does have a faster brain, that has great ideas, that all the things that we talked about, obviously they have potential in so many areas in life and in business and innovation. Where do those brick walls come in terms of, you always say, well, at the end of my life, I want to make sure that I lived at my potential or what have you. But where do those barriers come into play year after year that, that person keeps hitting?
Well, one thing, tell me if this is what you're getting at. The expression that I heard years ago was something like, there's no something like greater burden. No, I don't know, something like a great potential is a big burden. So I don't know how they said it, but that idea that when you have a lot of people will tell you when you're gifted at an early age, again, that you have a lot of potential. You're not living up to your potential. You're not doing enough. You should be a high achiever. You should be a CEO by now, or you should have won a Nobel Prize by now. There's all of that, but there's all that pressure when people see you have potential. What can happen then is paralysis. A person ends up being what they call sometimes underachieving. Not being able to function very well. The extreme is sort of like the person who is just not, I don't know what, I can't think of a good example, but just somebody who really is depressed, let's say, and not functioning very well, and they're very smart, and people don't understand what the problem is, but they feel overwhelmed by that pressure to perform and achieve. And perfectionism can be a result too,
Yeah.
where they feel paralyzed because they want to do it perfectly. They want to do something brilliant. They're told they're supposed to be brilliant, and that's just too much pressure. And so they sometimes don't do anything.
So, I mean, I'll give an example. Like somebody might have given a great speech at a company event. They were asked to give a speech, and the crowd loved it. Or maybe they did amateur night at a comedy club, and everybody laughed, and everybody's saying, you're really good at this. If you just kind of worked it a little bit, you could kind of make a living doing this. But they never get there. And it's just one example, but does focus come into play? Does distractions come into play? Does the monkey mind come into play, so to speak?
It can.
Yeah.
Yeah. I that I don't see that as much as just the pressure to, when the not disappoint people, if you're so, you've got to be great at everything. You're told you're gifted, so you better really be good at it. Or the other thing excuse me, that is a factor with this population is something that's called multi-potentiality, where you have many things you're good at and many things you want to do and lots of things you're interested in. And so you don't want to just stay with one thing. You might be really great at that comedy club, but maybe you don't really care about it that much. People think, that's what you should do because you're so good at it, but you do it for, I don't know, 6 months or a year or something, and then you want to do something else. If you're tired of it, it's like you're done. And
I think you just summed up my life. I ran a restaurant for many years, and I think I was really good at it. I grew sales tremendously, but I hated it. I had to get out. I couldn't take it anymore. So, and I had to go do something else. Everybody's like, "Why are you getting rid of the place? There's a line out the door," and I'm like, "I hate it. I hate going to work."
Did you like it in the beginning? Did you enjoy it at first?
Yeah, and I was actually good at it. I worked at a breakfast, lunch kind of. It was kind of like Friendly's here. It was a place called Brigham's, but again, I was a train wreck in school. But man, I could run circles around people in the kitchen, and I eventually ended up buying a franchise, and I did really well. I grew sales. It was one of the wealthiest communities in the state of Massachusetts. So business was there, but yeah, I got to a point where I'm like, I hate coming here now. So, and I was good at it. I'll say that, but yeah, I had to go do something else that just kind of, I'm a firm believer in that if you're going to do something for money, you better enjoy it. Some people just go to work and say, yeah, it's a job and I'll go find fun somewhere else. But I mean, if I'm going to do something 40, 50 hours a week, I'm going to like it.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so that's multi-potentiality. That's nothing wrong with you that you got tired of it and you wanted to do something else. And but I think a lot of people, the general person may, like I have a friend who was a first grade teacher for 30 years. I mean, that's what she did. She was really good at it, and she did it for her whole career life, and she was happy doing it. So people have one thing that they could do well and let them do it for many years. But if you have multi-potentiality, sometimes with the gifted person, once you master it, once you get really good at it, then you're done with it. It's ironic to people. What do you mean? You're good at it, so why aren't you staying? It's because you've learned everything about it that you can learn, and you're a learner. You want to learn more. What's the next thing? I'm done because I've mastered it, as opposed to stay with it because you've mastered it.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I have I have that big question here, if you will. So maybe it's a deep question, but what life lessons can others take away from somebody with that gifted mind, that rainforest mind? What kind of basic life lessons could they learn?
I'm not sure what you mean. What that people who don't have rainforest minds
Yeah.
could.
So for example, I'll give an example or two. Is I think in the ADHD world, we need to, what I would say, find our dopamine. And just like I said, we've got to find something that we've got to find a career that we love. We got to find hobbies we like. We got to, what have you. And I think that's something that a lot of people, like we just mentioned, could kind of take away from the ADHD brain, so to speak, is that there are certain things that I think the ADHD person needs in place to thrive in life. So I
Mhm.
guess what could others that don't have that rainforest mind learn from the rainforest mind?
What what could others learn from the rainforest mind?
Yeah.
So you don't want, this is not a question, what does the rainforest mind person need to thrive? It's what do the other people need from the rainforest mind? It's
Yeah.
like,
So I
huh.
guess what could I learn
Mhm.
from the people that you work with? What are some of the life lessons, if there are any?
Huh. I, I don't know. What are the life lessons well, see, you are a person with the rainforest mind. So, but I hear what you're saying. What could other people learn? Is it something like that to appreciate, to understand that this person is not, so tell me if this answers your question. This person is not arrogant. I mean, some of them are arrogant maybe, but most people, they're called arrogant, they're called nerds, and they're called names. They're not appreciated. So maybe appreciate these people because they have a contribution to make. They can change the world. Um, they have strengths and sensitivity and beauty and remarkable abilities that can help. Just listen to them. And don't criticize them or feel maybe threatened by their abilities. Appreciate what they have to contribute, because these are people who can maybe help solve some of these big problems that we are living with right now. Um, they can, they have compassion. They're passionate. They have big emotions. They can, bring them in to your committees and don't judge them or don't criticize them or ostracize them. I guess let them lead. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, I think so. And like I said, there's a couple examples that I think um, I'm putting my quotes up here. Nobody can see it, but quote, normal people or neurotypical. Okay. So, like I said, I think it's important for people to, like I said, at least in the ADD world, is find your dopamine, find what excites you, find the things that get you up in the morning. Um, like
That's
you
to
said,
that's what you're telling the ADD people. That you're not telling the other people that.
yeah, I guess what I'm getting at is, you know, what, say I'm a neurotypical person and I'm talking with somebody, like I said, with the rainforest mind or somebody with ADD,
Mhm.
and they have thrived in life. Um, what are those things that allowed you to thrive in life? What did you have to do? So, for example, the ADD person, I needed to find a career that I loved. I needed to find things that got me up in the morning. I needed to understand that those bad report cards were not an indication of who I am as a person. I needed to make sure that I took care of my mind and my body. I needed to make sure I got a good night's sleep. I
Mhm.
needed to work on my strengths. So As a person with ADHD, a lot of people have the ability to hyper focus. I learned how to channel that, those types of things. So I guess that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that, you know, when a neurotypical person speaks with somebody with the rainforest mind, what are some of those kind of basic life lessons? And I think you kind of answered it. So
Okay. Well, and the things that you just mentioned, a lot of those would apply.
yeah,
Right? Yeah. Find find your career paths that that feed your soul, that nourish you, right? Don't and so it's more than one career, right? Find several careers along your lifespan that feed you and nourish you. Um, don't pathologize your characteristics, your intensity and your sensitivity and your intellect. Don't label them bipolar disorder or obsessive compulsive disorder, right?
yeah,
See
yeah,
them as part of your rainforest mind. And the other thing, I don't know, it's hard to find other rainforest minded people, so there is that loneliness factor too. um, it's just they just seem to be, in the statistics they talk about gifted children are 3 to 5% of the population, maybe 10% at the most. So, but usually there's a spectrum of giftedness too. So you can be on the high end of the spectrum in that what they call profoundly gifted range. They can use the word genius or something like that. And so there are fewer and fewer people at that end of the spectrum. So one of the issues is loneliness. So maybe, the other thing is I found my people, or I found my clan, or I found a few other people who have rainforest minds where I can be as quick as, I can be like as intense and think as fast as I want. And we can have these conversations where they get me, where they don't get lost. They don't glaze over when I start talking about something that's
right.
really interesting to me. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I that yeah, exactly. That's what I was getting at. I'll use my son for example, going to a new school, and um, it's a tech school, but he wants to get into arts and graphic design and animation and all this stuff, and he doesn't really get that in a traditional high school, and he's a little apprehensive about making the move this year. But I said, look at all the people and look at all the kids that you're going to meet that have the exact same interests that you do. How cool would that be to spend all day at school
Mhm.
around other people that like exactly what you do? I think that'd be awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
rather than, I mean, in the tech school they do classes one week and career or shop the next week, so he's still going to have to sit in the classes, but every other week he gets to hang out with other kids that love exactly what he does. So I
That
think,
sounds great.
yeah, it'd be huge for his development. So yeah, yeah. Cool. So tell people how they can find you and who you like to work with.
Yes. Well, I have a blog. That's probably the best. My blog website is rainforestmind.com. I have a couple of books that I have a book on called Your Rainforest Mind, a guide to the well-being of gifted adults and youth. And you can find that book on my website. And then I have a second book that it's got a long title. I can't even, I don't have it in front of me, but um, but you can find both books on the blog. And the second book is the blog. Some of the most popular posts I compiled into a book, so that and then so that people would have them organized. So I have them under topics of perfectionism and sensitivity and loneliness, and so some of the people reading the blog requested that I make it into a book. So I have those. But anyway, the best way to reach me is through the blog, and I do consult with. I only can be a counselor to people in Oregon. My license only allows me to be a therapist when somebody's in state.
Okay.
But I do consult worldwide with people, gifted people who just want some guidance around these particular issues. It wouldn't be counseling, but parents of gifted kids, I consult around the world with those people too.
Perfect. Well, thank you. I think this has been a great discussion. Maybe we'll have you back to talk about slice off one of those topics like perfectionism or something like that. I think a lot of us struggle with that, good or bad. So, but thank you. This has been great.
Oh, thanks, David. I enjoyed it.
That's a wrap, everybody. Thanks so much for hanging out with us and hanging out to the end of the podcast. I hope you've been able to take away something from our expert guest that you can implement in your life and your business. And I value each and every one of you. If you like what you hear in the podcast, you like the experts that I have every week on the podcast, I'd love for you to hop on iTunes or your favorite podcast platform and tell us what you think. Give me a positive review. It helps reach more people. If you want to learn more about me, you can go to overcomingdistractions.com. There you can find all the past podcast episodes. You can find a copy of the book where you can get a link to Amazon or Barnes & Noble. So until next time, thank you so much.